The movie opens with a chaotic forest fire as Jessica, a geologist, and Buck, a ranger, try to escape. Going back 12 hours earlier, Buck takes Martin, the owner of ML Intercontinental Group, on a float plane ride to survey the land. Afterwards, Stanley, the project manager, updates Martin on the mine rehabilitation reports. Buck, however, warns that a faulty line forced its closure, which could pose a risk to their crew. Martin decides to move the construction because Stanley informs him that they've claimed thousands of acres. Buck then suggests using the abandoned ranger station as a temporary camp. Stanley informs the workers about the site change and tells them to pack up. Unknowingly, a tractor hits some gas cylinders, causing a leak. Meanwhile, Buck calls his cousin Amara, also a ranger, asking her to pick up his fishing gear from his mother, Janine. When Amara arrives, Janine senses Buck has been avoiding her. Since retiring as chief ranger, she feels restless at home, compiling mine data. Buck is surprised to find Jessica and her dog Charlie at the ranger station, which reminds him of his military days. But Jessica explains she's been researching rocks there for months. Buck tells Jessica about Martin's project, including the secured mines and land claims. Frustrated that it will disrupt her research, Jessica vents, and Buck apologizes before leaving. Later, Amara calls Buck, warning of an incoming storm with possible lightning. She has already stationed Luis, another ranger, at the tower in case of any fire sparks. Buck asks Amara for the number of the State Forestry Department, wanting to look into Jessica since she's losing her excavation site. Amara agrees, but insists he talk to Janine first before ending the call. Buck tries to get Martin to extend Jessica's stay, but Martin's lawyers have already severed her lease, so there's nothing he can do. Later, Jessica updates Abby, her co-worker, on the situation. Abby offers to fly in and help pack up, but Jessica decides to wait, hoping for a better outcome. After dropping Martin and his crew in town, Buck gets a radio call from Amara, informing him that smoke is rising from Martin's former site. Moments later, the gas explodes due to the lightning, triggering a fire. Alarmed, Buck tells her to sound the alarm and call volunteers, promising to return in 30 minutes. While flying back, Buck remembers Jessica and tries to radio her. She assumes it's about packing up and ignores the call. He then contacts the ranger station but gets only static. Leaving a message, he shares that he's heading to the old ranger station to get Jessica since she's near the fire. Outside the station, he finally reaches Amara. However, the connection is bad and they don't hear themselves. Rushing inside to get Jessica, he unknowingly drops his phone in his haste. Buck tells Jessica they need to evacuate, but she refuses to leave her research. With no choice, he begins helping her pack. As the fire spreads, he insists they leave immediately. Unfortunately, they rush out just as the fire reaches the plane, causing it to explode. Things just got really bad. Wasting no time, they take Jessica's Jeep and speed off. Meanwhile, Amara contacts Buck's sister, Roma, head of the aerial firefighting squad, for backup. Amara tries to radio Buck again, but gets only static, making her worry. She sends a message to Janine for help, knowing they'll need all the backup they can get. Buck realizes he lost his phone, growing frustrated. Jessica offers hers, but there's no signal, adding to his frustration. In the rush, she doesn't notice a falling tree, which crashes onto the Jeep's bonnet, forcing them into a crash. Roma begins spraying fire retardant from the air to contain the blaze. In the Jeep, Jessica panics when she realizes Charlie is missing. She and Buck search the woods and finally find him unharmed. Buck tries to start the Jeep, but the engine is wrecked. With no other choice, he tells Jessica their best bet is to reach his family's hunting cabin, 60 miles away, to access a radio. As they walk, Buck asks why she became a geologist. Jessica shares that her love for nature started with childhood picnics in the wild with her parents and brother. Buck apologizes for being tense in the Jeep, and Jessica apologizes for her part as well. They both know they must work together to make it out safely. At the station, Amara gets a call from Abby, who saw the fire on the news. Amara assures her that Jessica is already on the list of missing persons and that they're searching for her. Janine calls next, and Amara updates her. She believes Buck went to get Jessica but has since lost contact. Janine, however, trusts that he'll head to the cabin. She arranges to meet the ground unit at the highway and lead them to the lake to draw water for the fire. Meanwhile, Jessica's ribs ache from the crash. Buck suggests resting, but she refuses. As he cleans his own injury, Jessica offers to help. With night approaching, Buck suggests they find shelter. Jessica proposes heading to the base of the mountains, where rock formations provide cover. Once there, she suggests taking a cave route to the cabin, but Buck prefers the woods, where he's more confident with the trail. Jessica thinks Buck is being stubborn, but he doesn't want to take risks with the fire spreading. After roasting dinner, he insists on wetting a cloth for her ribs at the lake. Touched by his care, she tells him to eat first. Meanwhile, Amara, Roma, and Janine communicate over the radio for fire updates. Amara and Roma worry they haven't spotted Buck from the air, but Janine trusts his survival skills. At the cave, Jessica feels guilty that Buck had to rescue her and assumes his parents must be worried. He shares that his mom is tough and his father has passed. He never got to say goodbye because Janine didn't tell him when his father's time came, and he's never fully moved past it. Charlie suddenly barks in alarm, and Buck realizes a bear is nearby. He quietly tells Jessica to pack so they can circle back to the mountain. She suggests the cave for a quicker escape, but Buck warns of greater dangers inside. Before they can decide, the bear reaches them, and Buck shouts for them to run into the cave. At a fork in the path, he insists on one way, but Jessica, seeing light ahead, convinces him to take hers. It turns out she's right, and they emerge safely onto a shortcut trail to the cabin. Later that night, Janine comforts a worried Amara over a video call. She tells her to have Roma fly past the cabin again, just in case Buck is there. Amara believes Janine can do her job and still worry about Buck, even though he's a capable ranger. She admits she's scared, and Janine is too, but she's holding it together to stay focused on helping Buck and the others. Roma still hasn't spotted him, making her worried. She radios all crews, urging them to call it in if they see anything since it's been too long. As Buck and Jessica reach the cabin, they hear Roma's plane. With renewed hope, Buck waves his glow stick, but she doesn't see them and flies off. Frustrated, they rush inside to radio her, only to find the battery empty. Buck tries starting the generator, but there's no gas, making him even more frustrated. Jessica reassures him that at least they're safe for the night. He tells her they need rest, since the main road is still 5 hours away. He hands her an ice pack for her ribs, a chocolate from the first aid kit, and covers her with his blanket, which touches Jessica. Buck mentions that his whole family is in rescue services and asks if she has someone waiting for her back home. She doesn't, and turns the question on him, eventually learning he only has his family. He suggests she sleep while he keeps watch. Jessica offers to take turns, but Buck insists, admitting he doesn't sleep much anyway. She asks for the reason, but he instantly shuts down. Before heading inside, Jessica sincerely thanks him for everything. Over a video call, Janine tells Amara they still haven't found Buck, and she gets emotional looking through the family album. Amara comforts her, assuring her Buck will return. She suggests they all spend time together when he does, which brings a small smile to Janine's face. The next morning, Buck wakes to find Jessica fixing a battery gauge. She's found a solar panel among their packed items and sets it in the sun. With this, they can charge the radio, making Buck excited. She thanks him for saving her hard drive, admitting she would have lost years of work without him. Just then, they get 1 bar of signal. Excited, Buck goes for a hug, while Jessica tries for a high five, making the moment awkward. However, trouble comes knocking when the bear returns. Tension fills the room as Buck signals Jessica to stay quiet. He carefully moves to shut the open door, hoping not to alert the bear. Unfortunately, the bear doesn't leave. It moves closer instead. In the process, it crushes the solar panel, stopping the charge at just 1 bar. Buck listens at the door, thinking the bear might be gone, but before he can finish the thought, it lunges at the door, making them jump back in fear. Buck tells Jessica to run with Charlie, but she refuses to leave him alone. Desperate, she grabs the radio and calls out for help. Luckily, Amara and Janine hear her. Unfortunately, the connection is poor, leaving Jessica frustrated as she struggles to hear anything. Amara also can't pinpoint their location, but Janine is convinced they're at the cabin. She instructs Roma to keep an eye out, stressing the need for a clear visual before deploying a helicopter. At the cabin, the situation worsens as the bear relentlessly pounds on the door, nearly breaking it down. It's now or never, and Buck leads Jessica and Charlie out through the back, but while running, he stumbles and crashes to the ground, losing consciousness instantly. Meanwhile, Roma radios Amara, reporting no sign of Buck at the cabin. However, the cabin has been torn apart, likely by a bear searching for food, confirming Buck and Jessica were there. Amara is devastated, and Roma sadly tells her to inform Janine, feeling equally heartbroken. Luckily, Jessica rushes back for Buck and manages to wake him in her panic. As he regains consciousness, he notices the wind has shifted, bringing the fire dangerously close. Jessica suggests outrunning it, but Buck has sprained his ankle, making that impossible. He tells her about an abandoned lookout that might have equipment, and she immediately helps him walk toward it. On the way, they find an abandoned quad bike. Jessica quickly tries to get it started, while Buck, despite the pain, limps forward and picks up a pair of binoculars from the bike to assess the fire's movement. Meanwhile, Amara reveals they're running out of supplies to fight the fire, but Janine informs her of the heavy rain that's already starting, judging by the clouds. Amara is relieved and quickly updates Roma, who's still searching for Buck. Buck also notices the shifting weather but realizes the rain won't reach them in time. Their best chance is to get to the river. Just then, the engine of the quad bike roars to life, filling them with hope, only for it to sputter and go off immediately due to an empty fuel tank. Smoke thickens around them, and Buck calls out an alarm when he sees a tree falling straight toward Jessica. He lunges forward, pushing her out of the way just in time, but taking the brunt of the fall himself. However, Charlie isn't as lucky. Jessica panics when she realizes he's trapped beneath the tree. Buck freezes, gripped by a flashback of his military dog taking a bomb blast. Jessica's frantic calls pull him back to reality, and they work together to lift the tree, freeing Charlie. Unfortunately, he's badly injured. The fire draws closer, and Buck urges Jessica to take the flare gun and run. She refuses, unwilling to leave him and Charlie behind. As he insists, she silences him with a passionate kiss before firing the flare into the sky. Roma spots it immediately and excitedly radios Amara and Janine. Roma is 12 minutes away, but Amara decides to take the helicopter herself to reach them faster. Buck and Jessica hear it approaching, reigniting their hope. Amara lands in a clearing and calls for Buck. When there's no response, panic sets in until she spots him limping with Charlie in his arms, Jessica supporting him. They push forward with so much determination as rain begins to fall, reaching the helicopter just in time. Amara helps them inside and radios Roma and Janine, who are relieved beyond words. Overwhelmed with emotion, Janine apologizes for not telling Buck when his father passed, explaining she wanted to keep him focused in Afghanistan. Buck in turn apologizes for shutting her out and tells her he'd love for her to meet Jessica. The worst is finally over. A week later, Buck and Jessica are officially together, and his bond with Janine is progressing. Jessica takes a new role as Martin's consultant for substitute land usage, with a leased apartment and research funding. Buck congratulates her, and when she asks if he's talked about his service days, he insists he'll handle it alone. Jessica reminds him it's okay to accept help, and he agrees to call Veteran Services. She assures him she and Charlie are there for him, then kisses him warmly before they head inside, ready for a fresh start.